We watched, what was it called? There was one called The Three Idiots. I'll keep my cool better because I know people are watching, and it's like, it didn't go viral. It didn't work, and I got more views. So invited to the Ambani wedding, right? Still pretty gleeful about that, right?
I see a glee.
It made me
I
pretty.
see a glee on your face.
It made me pretty happy.
And so, welcome to Jack of All. And we have Ricky Pond with us. Ricky, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, are you nervous now?
Yeah, I always get nervous. Like it's kind of that pregame jitters. I think once we get going, I think we'll kind of calm down. But I liken it always to when I was a teenager playing football. Just before kickoff, you got the jitters, you got the butterflies, and then the ball's kicked, and you just sort of settle into the game. So I'm sure that'll happen here in the next few minutes, but right now, yeah.
I would like to start with knowing, who is Ricky Pond? Who was Ricky Pond when you started understanding what your identity is, who Ricky is, this little child. Where were you born? What has your journey been? What are some events that have shaped you to be who you are today?
Mhm.
So we can start from, where do you live? We are shooting this in Seattle for our audience members, and this is our first podcast. Ricky is also from Washington, and uh, if you could share, how's your life?
My life's good. Good supportive family, supportive wife. My kids are supportive most of the time. It kind of probably depends on what I'm doing that day. But I started way back. I guess we could go way back. I grew up in a real small town in Utah, farming community.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, my high school was, I don't know, there were to my class was like 250 kids in my graduating class, and so it was a small town. Everybody knew everybody,
Mm-hmm.
right? My sisters took dance at a dance studio, so every June, towards the end of the school year, they would
So,
have a dance recital.
so how big was your family? Like, how many brothers and sisters were you?
There were five kids in my family. I'm the second oldest of the five. I've got three sisters and a brother. And so, we grew up just, we didn't have the internet. We didn't
Yeah,
have cell phones. I mean, technology back then,
yeah.
the earliest technology I can remember that everybody wanted when they were a teenager was a pager, right? So they
So how did you do your schooling there, and high school there and college there? And when did you get, or what made you leave Utah?
So, the high school, I did grade school, junior high, middle school, and high school there. The high school has since been rebuilt, of course, and bigger and better. Um,
With ACs now?
I'm sure with ACs now, and running water,
Yeah. Oh,
it's
wow.
important. That's important. But
Sorry to interrupt, but to touch upon that, what was the situation back then when
no,
there was no running water?
No, that was running water. It was just that's just one of the things that you tell your kids to make them feel like they have it. They have
Yeah,
it,
I thought
different.
only the Indian dads did that. Actually,
No, no.
it's a universal thing, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. So
interesting. Yeah.
no, that was I left basically my hometown when I was 19 years old. I left to serve a church mission. Went to Baltimore, Maryland area for 2 years,
Wow.
and then came home, worked for a little bit, as basically I sprayed lawns with fertilizer for a summer.
Wow.
And then I went to college. I went to Rick's College in Rexburg, Idaho, which is
Rick's
now
College.
Rick's College. Yes,
Amazing.
yes. I've got a shirt that says Rick's College.
It's where? In
It's
Idaho?
in Rexburg, Idaho.
Okay.
And it's now
Uh,
BYUI, and it's where my kids are going right now. And so it's bigger now. It's a 4 year university
wow.
instead of a 2 year uh, program. It was more of a junior college then. Um, and yeah, so that's kind of when I left my hometown. Met my wife in school
In Idaho?
in Idaho. Yeah,
Wow.
she grew up here in Washington State. Went down to Idaho to go to school, and
Wow.
that's kind
Wow.
of where we met. My sisters, they started dance classes
Hmm.
at the dance studio there in my small town. Right,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
everybody took dance
So you
lessons
guys knew the dance teacher as
from.
well?
I
Was it that
didn't I
small?
didn't know them that
I
well,
see.
right, at the time, right, but everybody that was in our town went to that dance studio because it was really the only one in town. And I was 7, 8 ish, right? And we went to their dance recital, and they had just started um, clogging in their dance studio.
What is
And
clogging?
so it's a form of tap dance form. It's like the best way to explain it is sort of like you've seen river dance, right?
No, I
No, you
haven't.
haven't seen
No.
river dance.
I
So
know tap dance though. I've
yes,
seen a
it's
lot of
like
tap
tap.
dance.
It's
Yeah.
like tap dance. There's a
Okay.
lot of tap involved,
I
but
see.
it's really kind of from Appalachia. It's sort of a folk dance,
I see.
the Appalachian Mountains, right? And so there's an adaptation with that and tap dance, and it's modern day,
I
whatever.
see.
Anyway, my mom, she's like, "Hey, we should sign you up for clogging." I'm like, "I'm not gonna take clogging. I'm not dancing. I'm not a sissy or whatever,
Oh,
right?"
why would she want to do that though? Why would she want to um, suggest you to take up dance classes without you showing any interest?
Well, because I'm sure I danced at home,
Ah,
because we would dance at home and do stuff, and like my sisters would like they would teach us some of their
yeah,
dance steps and
yeah.
things like that. I learned a lot of my dancing from my older sister, right? She would, and we would watch MTV and VH1 and watch all the great dancer, performers, singers, and their music videos, and we would try to do their steps. Um, and yeah, and so we went to the recital. I saw it, and I was like, "Mom, I want to do that." And so we signed up,
And
and
this is clogging.
this was clogging. And so I started clogging when I was 8, and I danced all the way through high school, and then in college, when I went to Rick's College, they had a clogging and folk team, and so I joined the clogging and folk team. I was there and got on the team. And on that team, we of course had clogging routines that we would choreograph and we would do, but we would also learn folk dances from other countries.
Interesting.
And so that was kind of my introduction to dances from around the world,
That's
right?
amazing.
And so that was kind of my journey in dancing. People are always like, "Hey, did you get trained in dancing?" Well, I guess, I guess I had some training, but it was in clogging,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
I sort of figured out
yeah,
other dances on my own, and
yeah,
then of course in college we did folk dances
yeah.
from other places
Yeah,
as
let's
well.
let's dig deeper into this because it's a very interesting story, and it's almost like the inception of who we know as Ricky Pond today, right?
Right.
First of all, from the context of the Indian audiences that are watching you today and your fans, what do you mean by you danced through high school? Were you thinking that this is something that I'm going to pursue as a career after high school, or I'm just gonna take this as one vocational class?
No, it was just sort of one of those extracurricular things that I did. As a kid, I grew up, dancing was something that was just another activity that I was involved in because
Right.
I played soccer, baseball, football,
Wow.
so swim team,
Mm-hmm.
um, basically three sports a year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It wasn't year-round sport.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my son, when he went through basketball, he played basketball year round. That was the sport he chose, and he just did it, right?
Yeah,
There was a season for soccer. There was a season for baseball. There was a season for football. Nobody's played year round anything
I
when I
see.
was growing up,
I
right?
see.
But dancing was one of those things that, you know, I did. Not everybody did it, but
Mm.
it was kind of like my brother and me, and there were quite a few other kids and guys that started to dance
Right.
clog after we started
You
clogging.
started, yeah. Yeah.
So it was because it started off really small, like three or four of us,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then it grew and grew
Yeah.
and grew, and
You
now
guys
it's
kind of
huge.
opened the gates of, resistance for other folks who were also interested in
I think so.
learning
Yeah,
dance. Yeah,
I
I
think
can
so.
imagine that. Is that something that you do today? Is clogging a part of the dance moves that you show today?
It's part of what I do behind the scenes, right? I mean, I'll clog every once in a while. I'll do some steps. People are like, "Why don't you do that more often?" I've done a couple of reels where I've clogged.
I see.
I would have to dig out my shoes. I usually just do it in my, you know, tennis shoes or whatever, and
Hmm.
so you don't really hear the sounds
Mm-hmm.
as well
Mm-hmm.
as you
Mm-hmm.
probably should.
Mm-hmm.
But no, dancing, like clogging was kind of, that was the thing, right? I grew up, and as I got older, and to help my parents pay for my classes,
Mm.
I would help teach in the
Yeah.
studio. So
Yeah.
I would teach the
Yeah.
little kids
Yeah.
how to do the steps and help, with the instruction and
Mm.
stuff like that. And as I got into college, I was a TA for other classes,
I
right?
see.
So there was opportunities there for me to teach. Now, you know, I wanted to be a cartoonist for Disney. I wanted to be an animator and an illustrator.
Let me stop you right there because I feel like in the last 10 minutes, I've heard at least 10 things that you were really good at, and like they're really hard things to do, including three or four different sports, dancing various forms, international folk dances, and do you consider yourself as someone who is multi-talented as well as someone who likes to pursue all their multiple talents? How do you think about that? And we'll come back to uh, where we stopped after you can answer
Sure,
this one.
sure. I don't know. I mean, I consider myself that I have talents, right? I believe that I was blessed with certain talents,
Yeah,
that God gave me certain talents
yeah,
to develop,
mm-hmm,
to share.
yeah,
Um, Now I just hope that I develop the right talents, right? I don't have time to do all of them all the
yeah,
time, right? But
yeah,
I loved sports growing up. I
right,
loved the competitive nature of the
right,
sports. Um, we Whether it was, you know, on an actual team or just playing, shirts and skins at the friend's house on basketball, or night games, playing, kick the can
yeah,
after dark or
yeah,
something like that,
yeah,
right? There was always some competitive
yeah,
game
yeah,
going on. um, Drawing and art and painting, those were
yeah,
things that I
yeah,
loved to do and I enjoyed to do, and
yeah.
that's what I thought, because I never looked at dance or
Mm-hmm.
I would have loved to have been an NFL football player.
I
I mean,
see.
football, I loved football, and I would have, but I was always the small guy on the
Mm-hmm,
team. In
mm-hmm.
high school, as a senior, I probably weighed 135 pounds soaking wet. I was like probably 5'8", 5'9". Maybe even shorter. I think I grew 4 inches after high school. So
Wow.
it's, there's, um, so I was talented and I was good, but
Hmm.
I just wasn't blessed with the tools
I see.
physically that I needed in order to
I see.
continue.
I see. I want to know, while growing up and up to this point, even like, was your mental model such that you would anchor your thinking around a career or a profession that you want to pursue, or what was your uh, life's philosophy? Like, I am going to live and explore everything,
Hmm.
or for someone like me, right? I have chased a couple of professions in terms of creativity or a career, and I've always seen myself as that person in the future,
Sure.
and so all my thought and my feelings and hence the translated actions are in the direction of that or those things. So growing up, were you obsessed about, or even like anchored around a few ideas about yourself or things or professions, or how were you thinking up until the point today, or even before COVID?
I knew I always wanted to be like in the art world,
You
right?
did.
Wasn't sure exactly how that was going to play out. Like I said, I wanted to be a cartoonist for Disney, but by the time I got into school, um, that's when cell animation started to become a thing of the past, and it now started to become like Pixar, and all of the digital animation started to happen, right?
So
So it was kind of that that career in a sense, and I struggled. It was interesting because I wanted to be this my heroes in the art world were like uh, realism
yeah,
artists.
yeah,
Norman Rockwell. I loved his stuff. I wanted to draw like him. I wanted to, everything. I wanted to just draw perfect. And animation and cartoons are not that. And so I struggled with the sense of finding a
hmm,
style in
hmm,
art, right?
hmm,
Because I would try drawing cartoons, but then I would put too much detail in them and I would
hmm,
struggle.
hmm,
And I got started taking some design classes, and
yeah,
I started actually pulling better grades in my graphic design classes. Hence, I started, but then of course, I started dating, I got
yeah,
married.
yeah,
I started thinking career, what's going to be a better career choice for raising a family.
yeah, yeah,
Um, you know, there were more opportunities to get on as a graphic designer to a company than there was as an illustrator. An illustrator, you most likely you either work for Disney, Pixar, these big guys,
production
right?
guys, yeah,
Or you're a freelancer.
yeah,
And so you struggle,
yeah,
and so I chose the more corporate side
yeah,
of things, and was able to go into graphic design, kind of get a double associate's degree
yeah.
in illustration and graphic design, and then went to LA to finish out my degree in graphic design.
Wow. And which is what you still do, right? Graphic design is
Yeah,
something you still do, and you enjoy doing that.
I do. Yeah.
Would you like to share more about what cell animation is and how it went obsolete because of the digital innovation there?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that cell animation. Oh, you had background animators who would paint all of backgrounds, and they would paint them on transparent sheets of paper,
I see.
right? And then character animators, where people have seen. I'm hoping they've seen flip books,
Yeah,
where
yeah, yeah.
you can take the page and you can
Absolutely.
flip it,
Yeah,
and then the
yeah,
stick figure
yeah.
walks, right?
I
That
mean,
is, in a sense, that's cell animation. So
mm,
each movement has to be
yeah,
animated, and each centimeter or each,
yeah.
like, there's 30 frames a second
I
or
see.
60 frames a second, right?
Yeah,
So there's probably 60 cell
right,
per second
right.
in order to animate any type of
Yeah,
movement,
yeah.
right? And so
And animation is images in motion.
it's
So,
images in motion, and
yeah,
you would draw and
yeah,
paint each one of those,
right.
right? So it would take years for them to create these
Right,
movies, and a
right.
team and an army of
So you were a fine
illustrators.
artist, like a hand artist who would, what did you mean by illustration?
Um, Illustration is just the design, or illustration was the art field
Right.
in which I could go into to learn how to draw.
I see.
paint, do all of the things that are necessary to become,
Makes sense.
and take that next
Yeah,
step
yeah,
into
yeah.
cell animation or
So
drawing.
interesting question. The reason I dug a little bit into the cell animation is I feel like there are a lot of artists and creatives um, who explore their creativity in a professional setup, and they do get impacted by the technological advancements. We've
Mm-hmm.
seen this with television repair folks and liftmans,
Mm-hmm.
or we've seen this with tailors, and a bunch of other professions we all can name. Do you think that was the reason why you did not could translate it into like something like a Pixar, where you felt that you had to again upgrade yourself, like we are seeing with the AI revolution now?
Sure.
And the reason this is so amazing to me that you share is the same technology a few decades after brought you something that you were not expecting, so it kind of, I'm trying to draw parallels as to how these things can affect an individual in different parts of their life. How
Sure.
did you feel about
Sure.
it?
Well, I kind of saw things kind of going a different direction, right? And of course, I went into graphic design, and instead of then wanting, doing cell animation
Right.
or those type of things, I decided to take graphic design with a movement-based track. So we would work on like movie titles or um, you know just movies title sequences or type moving on screen, whether it's in a commercial or whether it's in, so we would animate stuff like that. We would, because graphic design really is type and image
Yeah.
and making those work and tell a story, right?
Mm-hmm.
So movement in type was trying to tell a story with type moving on a
Yeah,
screen, right? So that's kind of where that evolved, of course, right? I didn't see myself trying to learn another set
I see.
of, because it was learning another set of skills. Um, I learned enough to be dangerous,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's like learning a new language
yeah,
in order to understand all the 3D
yeah,
animation and how it
yeah,
works and how everything works on a certain
yeah,
axis and this, that, and the other. And then, the computer does a lot of the work for you.
yeah,
And then you go back and you tweak things and then it, re-renders it. And it takes forever to render things.
yeah,
Back when I was going to school, we didn't have the big powerful computers that they have even today. But it could take days to render we would do these small animations in college, and it sometimes would take 3 4 hours to render like a
yeah.
10-second
It's the same with
little
the software
animation.
code,
Yeah,
and when people were um programming on punch cards,
yeah,
as you can imagine, it would take a longer time. There would be inherent time that would be required for each punch card to be in Fortran. I think that was the language they were talking about. I'm pretty sure it's the same kind of a technology era. Um, how much would you dance in a year?
I would dance probably 3 4 times a week
And this is
at the studio.
non-performative. This is
This is just
practice.
practice
Okay,
and teaching classes and things like that. And then performances, we had the big end of the year
I
performance
see.
that we did for our studio, but then we also had 3 or 4 um, uh, dance competitions, clogging competitions that we would go to,
Interesting.
and that we would compete against other people. And some people would come from the East Coast to dance at these competitions, and there were at the bigger cities like Ogden and
Mm,
Salt Lake, and
mm,
there were more studios, and they would
mm.
come, and we'd compete against each other, and
Yeah,
I worked my way up into the championship category, right? So there was beginner, intermediate, advanced, and championship, and so my brother and I started to choreograph our own routines and duet together. So we would it was two boys
mm-hmm.
dancing,
Yeah,
and we loved it. It was fun because we could do it at our house. We
yeah.
could just, and then we
What
would
songs
use
would
the
you
studio.
dance on? Country songs or
No, we would dance
uh
to
s-
top 40,
oh really?
like
Wow.
top 40 music, Bobby Brown,
Yeah.
Michael Jackson, Paul Abdul, Janet Jackson. You know,
Wow.
just the we would dance to the popular
So
songs.
it's a very, I would say, a flexible dance style. Like, you just give it a four beat and
Oh yeah,
it'll look, you can do clogging on an Indian song
oh
and
yeah,
still,
oh
okay.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
So I see. What other dance forms do you know?
I know clogging. I know some ballroom, two step, country
Two
swing.
step, yeah.
My wife, that's what my wife and I did all the time. We
I
used
see.
to country swing, two step, probably 2 or 3 times a week in college.
Yeah.
They would have country dances and we would go every week. And we loved to dance.
Yeah.
And so everybody asks, can she dance? I'm like, yes, she can, but she doesn't like to in front of the camera,
Yeah.
right? So we
Do you
just
like to get in front of the camera? Do you? And
I
before
do.
before you answer,
No, I do. 'Cause like I said, I'm a performer. I like to
yes,
perform
yes,
and when, for 15, 20 seconds, the show is
mm,
on. It's like performing in front
yeah,
of like judges,
yeah,
right? I
yeah,
loved like playing to the judges when I was on stage. If I could get the judges to look at my face
yeah,
and they wouldn't see if I messed up with my feet, right?
yeah.
If I could make eye contact with them and knew that they were looking at me here,
Wow,
then they weren't necessarily watching
I
people.
see. When you got married and when the family started, how did that impact your creativity, both positively or maybe there was a bit of a break, and how
Uh,
did you deal with that, and how did the kids bring more fire to you?
yeah, once I got married, basically the whole, okay, it's time to start thinking career, how I'm going to support this family, like a family that's eventually going to come, right? And so while I was at college, while we were in Idaho, I was still dancing on the dance team while I was going to school because that was just part of my school. Those were classes I took on the side for fun to kind of relax, to kind of get stress, relieve stress. That's kind of how I did it, right? But once we left school in Idaho and I went to a private design school in LA, I there wasn't really that outlet. So dance I kind of shelved it in
Yeah,
a way, and
yeah.
that's why when my friend from the dance team moved to Southern California, and she approached me about, hey, would you like to open a studio with me? I was like,
That's
I'm
what.
all on board,
Okay.
right? Because it was like, oh great, I can have my little outlet again, right? But that didn't happen, and we graduated from school. Well, we've had our first child 3 months before
Who is
graduation.
now 20
Who
plus?
who is, yeah,
Yeah.
now expecting their first.
Oh
Yeah,
wow. So you're
so
gonna be a.
gonna be a grandpa. So I don't think I'm ready for that bit, but we'll see. I told him I'm too young for that.
Congratulations, though. Thank you for sharing, and I'm very excited for that chapter of your life as well. Yeah, please
Yeah.
continue.
No, but so we moved from there and came to actually Seattle area because it was I graduated in 2000
Mm-hmm.
in December at end of the 2000, right? So we moved here to the Seattle area because it was kind of a artsy hub of, we're figuring, oh, I could find a job
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Seattle. I mean,
Mm.
there's all these tech companies,
Mm-hmm.
there's all these places, right? That was right when the dot-com bubble burst.
Okay,
And I was
that's
just
okay.
like, and so they were laying off creatives left and right because they just didn't have the marketing budgets. They
Yeah,
didn't have,
this was
those.
2001, I
It was,
believe,
yeah,
close to that.
2000,
Yeah.
2001.
Okay.
And so I was competing for entry level positions with people that had 10, 15 years experience on me because they were also applying for these same jobs because they didn't have work. And so they were taking a major pay cut
Yeah,
and they were hiring these people that had been in
yeah,
the
yeah,
and you can't blame them.
yeah,
Like, do I hire this kid right out of school or do I
yeah,
hire this guy that's been in the industry for
yeah.
10 years? Um,
2001, 2008,
right,
a few years ago.
right, right.
Yes.
And so I really couldn't find a job. I worked at a kids photo studio for a while at Sears for photo studio. I
Wow.
worked at a 1 hour photo place
Yeah.
for a bit.
Yeah. And mind you, back then there was no Fiverr, no Instagram,
Nope,
no Facebook groups,
nope.
no WhatsApp where you could
My
find
page.
$100 job, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, my page, my
MySpace.
MySpace, yeah,
MySpace, not my
MySpace,
page. MySpace, yes.
MySpace,
And it
yeah,
was a HTML thing, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
if you understood HTML, you could go in
yeah,
and make it work differently for
yeah,
you. But other than that, it was like this black screen with type and a
yeah,
picture, and it was just
yeah.
really,
And
really,
and I think now thinking of it, right? Because this is 2001, because all these startup companies, tech companies are bursting, going all over. Uh, Even whatever support internet provided before that was gone.
yeah,
So how
yeah.
did you navigate that?
So, like I said, I just bounced. I bounced from job to job. I started freelancing, trying to get as much design work as I could.
Did you have to do any odd jobs as well to keep yourself up?
Oh yeah, I did whatever I could in
Yeah,
order to pay the rent so
yeah.
that we could live. And I ended up we ended up getting a job. My first job was over on the east side of the state, Washington. So we moved from here and went to or from Seattle area and went over to the east side, and I started working for a hospital, is in their marketing or their communications
I see.
department.
I
And
see.
so I started designing things for the hospital, like
Uh-huh.
brochures for the
Uh-huh.
different
Yeah.
different parts of the
Yeah.
hospital.
Yeah.
Worked there for a couple of years
While your family is growing,
while my family is
so
growing.
you've had
we
your second one now
we
already?
yeah we
Okay.
we had our second one. She was born just probably a year into my next job, right? So now actually 2 years into my second job, because our oldest is now 2. She's just born,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
and then a couple years later, um I'm on my own. I started my own company in
Related
paper
to
monkey
graphics,
design and
graphic.
graphic design. Yeah, so I did that for 13 years, out of my house, just in a
Wow.
room in the house as our family was growing.
Single employee or
Just me, yeah, single
wow.
employee.
And how were you getting your jobs?
I would pound the pavement, make calls. I
I
would
see.
go visit
Any
people.
technology that helped you to get those
Um,
jobs?
Internet
Yeah,
at that point. That
YouTube, Facebook, any of those applications?
No, it was mostly, honestly, it was Yellow Pages,
I see.
and I'd
Wow.
make phone calls. Hey, you guys looking for design work?
Uh,
And scheduling
yeah,
meetings and going and
yeah,
talking to people.
yeah.
So it was,
Facebook was what, 2004 or something, and they didn't have groups or anything at that point
yeah,
of time.
yeah.
Wow.
So I didn't
Interesting.
really use
Yeah.
technology. Never, honestly, was ever one of those things that I used to find work.
It's funny you say
It's
that,
weird.
Ricky. It's funny you
Yeah.
say that. Do you think what do you think of what you're saying right now?
It's like it's foreign to everybody, right? Everybody that lives now, that's how they do business.
Yeah.
Everything's online, and nobody does anything unless it's online, kind
Yeah.
of thing,
Yeah.
right? Um, but it was face to face. When I was starting out and doing work, it was not, hey, I'm going to email this person, I'm going to email this person, I'm going to email this person.
Mm.
It was kind of, there was a little bit of emails and stuff, but I don't think it was an email world at that point. It was still early, 2000s
Right.
and stuff like that.
Right.
So it was not like it is today, of
Yeah.
course, right? And yeah, so things kept going, and
Yeah. So how were those 15 years like? I can imagine as a single on entrepreneur working from their own house or garage, with family growing and dogs and everything else adding. I'm pretty sure you were sleeping less and working more,
yeah,
right?
honestly, I loved
Yeah.
being self-employed.
Yeah, you did.
The freedom
Yeah.
of, hey, you know what? The kids have got a game
Right.
today.
Right.
I'm going to go watch the game
Right.
because I can work when they're
Right.
sleeping,
Right.
right? Or I can do that job later.
Right.
Um, and my I was never tied to a 9 to 5. I wasn't tied to I have to be in the office from here to here because I was self-employed. As long as I finished the job by the deadline that I agreed with the client,
Yeah, yeah.
then
There was no boss.
it didn't matter when I
So,
did it. And
so basically, back in 2005 or 6, for the next decade, you live like what the current generation is living, like a hybrid life, and they are working from their home, while their kid is crying in the next room, and wow,
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, it was tough because when you're home,
Yeah,
the kids run in and say,
yeah,
"Hey, Dad, I need help on
yeah,
this," and you're like, "Oh, I
yeah,
got to do this, but okay,
yeah.
what do we need to do?" And
Yeah, and
so,
today we have technology for that as well, but at that point you did not have that kind of support, right? So it
right,
was just you and your wife
yeah,
and kids,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. No, there were scary times. I
Yeah.
mean, there were scary times. There were times
How was 2008?
it was rough. I mean, there were times when it was kind of up and
Yeah.
down, and there were a couple times in that 13 years that I think we almost lost our home a couple of times
Wow.
because jobs were just scarce, right? It was like
Absolutely.
it was feast or famine. I was like slammed or I was like looking for work.
For work.
And I wasn't if we went on vacation, I wasn't making money, but you saw the money going out of the bank
Bank
account
account.
and
Yeah.
no money was coming in because it was just me, right? So while if we went on vacation, I was stressed out of my gourd because it was like
Wow.
I got to get back because I got to do some work so we can pay for all of this stuff, right? So it was
And
hard but very rewarding as well because I was there for the first steps of all my kids. I was there for their first words. I was there for like all of the things that you usually miss because you're at work, right? You're not home, but I was there.
wow.
And that's something
How
that
do you feel about
that
that?
nobody can take from me. No, and as a father, that's the coolest thing ever to be able to see that stuff because usually it's you come home and it's like, oh, so and so took their first step today, or they said this word today and you
Yeah.
didn't see it, or you get the stumbles afterwards
Yeah.
kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
you weren't there when they took that first
Yeah.
step. So I was very grateful that even though we had the struggles, those definitely made up for any of the struggles that we had.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very, very fortunate uh, are those people who can experience both those things at the same time.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's great to hear that from you.
yeah.
And this is all while dance was taking a back seat, or if I may, step back.
Yeah, no, no, we can jump back there because I started when we got to the east side. Once my son, my oldest, he was probably about 8, 8 years old or so, right? There was a dance studio, and I approached them and said, "Hey, would there be some time that I could start teaching? Would you be interested if I started teaching clogging classes at your studio, this, that, and the other?" And they were like, "Yeah, cool, that would be awesome." So we offered a couple of classes, and I started teaching in
This is
this
in Eastern
in
Washington,
yeah, and
back
so
still
I
there.
so I started to teach some clogging in a studio there. But of course, it was just it's kind of their it didn't work out because it was, they were like, "Oh, we need that time. So can you take this time?" And so we would have to move class to this time. And people had already made their weekly schedule. And it was really hard for everybody to move their time. So I actually took the part of our house and I ripped the carpet out and I put wood down on the floor. So, and I put mirrors up on the wall, and I tried to start a studio in my house because people wanted to teach or learn,
Learn. Yeah.
but we needed a steady time that they could come. And so we did that. And I taught there for about a year, a group of 4 or 5 boys
Uh-huh.
that were about
Uh-huh.
my son's
Son's age.
age. And it was fun. We would go perform at different events and things like that. It was a lot of fun. But of course, you know, as my family got bigger, as our kids got older, we needed that space back. So we kind of took that away, and my oldest son, he'll still kind of tap around every once in a while. But he was never like
Yeah.
one. I kind of felt like I forced him to do it
Yeah.
because it wasn't something that he wanted
Yeah.
to, but
Yeah.
it was
Were you pretty chill about it, or were you affected by the decision?
to stop
Yeah, to
teaching.
stop the whole studio thing
It
because
was hard.
it felt like you built it from the ground up.
Yeah, yeah,
Then you put in everything that you had to. You had some emotions tied to that
yeah,
place. So I
yeah.
was kind of curious to dig into
Yeah, no,
how you
it was
felt about it.
hard. It was hard to kind of stop because part of the fun was I started a class where parents would learn with their kids because there was parents that wanted to learn how to clog, but they
Yeah,
also had kids. And so I said, well, let's just have a parent kid class,
yeah,
right?
that's
We'll
pretty
teach you
genius. Yeah,
guys the same dance that they
it's
were
brilliant.
teaching them
Yeah,
because you're still all learning,
yeah.
right? So it was fun because we would have the parents and kids dancing together. And um, so it was hard to stop, but we just kind of had to at that point. And it again, dancing sort of other than the kids and I just messing around or uh, throwing on Just Dance on the Wii or
Yeah,
something like that, right? Because that was kind of our dance escape at that point
I
was the
see.
Wii. We started doing Just Dance, and the kids would challenge me to dances, and they'd kill me
I see.
because they knew how to
Yeah,
manipulate the controllers, and I
and
was trying to do the steps.
maybe a good point for us to uh, talk more about COVID and how that changed uh, anything for you and your business. Were you still in your home, in your running your own business from your home during COVID, or were you already employed?
No, at this point, I was employed. I work
Okay,
for a fruit company, and we
okay.
sell apples, pears, cherries, and blueberries
Oh,
around the world, around different areas, and so I was considered a what is it? I don't know, an important employee, like somebody that has we had to work because it was food related, right? And so I worked through COVID, but
okay.
my kids and my wife, they
Oh, you
were
mean you mean
I worked
an
every day.
essential
Essential
worker,
employee,
an
essential
essential worker.
employee.
Yeah,
So
an
I
essential
went
employee.
I went
Yes.
to work 9 to 5 or
Yeah.
10 hours a day every day, right? I went to the
Was this a
office.
food donation thing or a food supply chain? So
It
why
was
did
it
you
was
have to
it
go?
was food
As a
supply
graphic designer, I was curious to know why were you supposed
because
to
I was
go?
because I was part of I worked for that company, and so
So
it
you
was
couldn't
like
email your designs to your boss?
I wish I could have emailed my designs to
Yeah.
my
So
boss.
did they want you to like print it out and bring it like
Yes,
so you
probably.
actually carried like flash drives around in your office or you took your
Yeah, and I
laptop?
made sure I licked them all before I gave them to people. No,
No, I know,
yeah,
I'm being funny here, but I'm also very curious as to, I'm genuinely very
yeah.
curious as to how did you feel about that? Like, did you
I
think
was
you,
fine.
yeah, you just wanted to
I
make
was like,
sure, yeah,
okay, whatever.
okay,
Let's go to work. It was just never something that I worried myself too much about
yeah,
because I was like, if I get it, I get it,
yeah,
and we'll deal with it then,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And I just it was nice to go to work because I wasn't locked in the house,
yeah,
right? My
yeah,
kids, my wife, they were all locked in the house all day long.
yeah.
Um, I think they I think they binge watched about every show
Oh,
they could watch, right? And I
like everyone
was
else,
I was
yes.
at work wishing I was home binge
Yeah,
watching things,
yeah,
right? Because they moved everybody every other desk so that we had cubicles, and actually the cubicles are probably about 6 foot by 6 foot cubicles, right? But they moved us every other cubicle, and then some of us
for the
got moved,
distancing,
yeah, and
for
some
this,
of us were moved in boardrooms to give us
I see.
spacing, so everybody was spaced out more. We were all wearing masks, and so but we were all still there doing our day to day what we always do. And one day I came home. I think maybe it was a Saturday, it was a weekend or something, and the kids were just bored out of their mind because they had just, I think, watched. I don't know. My daughter probably watched her show for the fifth time, and she'd had it, right. And they came up, and this was the time that kids were putting their parents on social media,
Yes.
and it was blowing up and going
Yeah.
viral
Yeah.
because their parents, just making fun of their
Yeah.
parents.
Right.
And so they came upstairs. My wife and I were sitting, laying in our bed watching television. And we were watching a movie, and they came in and they're like, "Hey, Dad, let's go down and do a dance for TikTok." And
What is TikTok?
I'm like, well, I knew what
You
TikTok
know
was
what it
because they were on it all the
Oh, I
time.
see.
And I'm
Yeah.
like,
This was deep into the
yeah,
social distancing thing. Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. And they were
I see.
watching it all the time. They would always bring, "Hey, look at this video." And I'm like, oh, this is so stupid, right? I'm
Yeah.
like, why are you guys wasting your time
Yeah.
on this app? You waste all your day on this
Did you
app and
say
you do
that
not.
literally?
Oh, I literally
And what
said
do
that.
they say now to you?
I'm sure they could probably say the same thing to me. But yeah, so at first I said no.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not doing it. I said, you guys, no, I'm not gonna go do a
What was your
dance.
apprehension?
I was watching a movie.
I see. So you just did not want to be bothered. It wasn't that you did not
Pretty
want
much.
to be out on the world
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you are a performer, as you
Yeah,
said.
pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
and so they left. They left, and about 20 minutes or so later they came back. And my son Dallin and my oldest daughter Audrey, who both kind of started me on this thing, they came back in the room, and Dallin's like, "Dad," he's like, "come do this dance with us." And I'm like, "No." He's like, "But you got to. I made you an account, and you've got to post something." And I'm like, and my wife looks at me. She's like, "Just go do the dance with them." I'm like, "Oh, fine." So I get up, right, and we go downstairs, and we do this dance. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was just this. It wasn't a dance, right?
It's just a hook step,
it was
maybe.
these
Yeah.
TikTok moves with
Yeah.
your hands, and you know, I'm like, this isn't dancing, right? And I felt completely out of my element because
Wow.
I wasn't moving my
Yeah.
body, right? I wasn't dancing. I
So
was
this is
just
different
standing
kind
there,
of
just
dance even
doing
for
arm
you.
stuff, right?
I see.
And so I was like, this isn't dancing, right? Well, we did it. We posted it on my account. My daughter posted it on her account. Um, I ended up getting like 3 times the amount of views that she did. And so I was rubbing it in. I got more views than you. I probably got like, I don't know, 2,000 views. Maybe she got like 100 or a couple hundred views, right? And so I was just like, aha, your dad got more views than you. Which one are we going to do next? Right. So now I started like, okay, so what are we going to do next, guys? What are
I
we going to do
see.
next? And so that's just kind of how it started, and
Wow.
they sort of unlocked this,
And
they unlocked that little
did
entertainer in
you
me.
did you actually intentionally post it on two different accounts to make to assess or experiment, or why did you
I
just do that?
Well, they made me an account, so they
Mm-hmm.
had to post it on my account.
Absolutely.
Yes,
And
and
then
then my
one,
daughter had her
my
account, so
dad.
she had to
I
post
see.
it
I see.
to go viral
I
because it's her
see.
dad, right?
I see.
But it didn't go viral. It
Yeah.
didn't work,
Yeah.
and I got more views.
Uh.
So yeah, so you can tell I'm still pretty gleeful
Yeah,
about
I
that,
sense.
right? It made
I
me
see a glee.
it made me
I
pretty
see a glee on
yeah,
your
it made
face.
me pretty happy. But yeah, we started doing dances daily on that.
Wow.
And it honestly got to a point where for me it became this, because my kids had a friend, or my daughter had a friend who had a ton of followers on TikTok.
I
Like
see.
he was TikTok famous, I guess, right? In the kids world
Uh-huh.
standards, right?
What is that? What is the parameter? What is the definition
I
of
have
that?
no idea.
Is it maybe Dallin can answer that
Yeah,
question.
Dallin can tell you what he
One
was.
million. He's
Yeah,
saying one.
yeah.
Dallin is saying 1 million.
And he was close to that. I don't know if he
Wow.
had a million or he was a little over a million or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
right? But he wasn't verified, and the
yeah.
kids were like, "Oh, Dad."
It's million nowadays. It's just million for everything.
Yeah, yeah,
Everything.
yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
just a million. Like
yeah,
you just throw a million
yeah.
out.
And so he was like, "It would be so cool if you got verified before he did." And I had what? At that time, I probably had like a couple of thousand, maybe 20,000 followers,
Yeah.
right? Because
And
it
this
just
we're
started to
talking
grow.
about TikTok, right?
Yeah, TikTok.
Okay. Yeah.
So on TikTok, that was where we started, and so my whole my whole goal with this um, social media thing was to show the kids that if you're consistent with something and you do it, you can be successful at it. Like it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what you do. If you're consistent at it, A, you get better. B, you find the people who like the stuff you like and they follow you, and you consistently start to create better content, right? And so that was just my goal. Like
That is excellent.
because kids today are squirrel, the
Yeah.
next thing, their attention span is like that long, and they will, well, my kids, they would bail on me.
Yeah.
They would be like, I'm like, okay, what dance we doing today? And
Yeah.
they're like, go do your own dance. Or
Yeah.
like, we're not doing it.
Yeah.
Like there were
Yeah.
times for weeks
Yeah.
that they wouldn't dance with me because
Yeah.
they were just like, it was almost like they were done with it. And, oh, we don't even watch TikTok anymore, kind of thing. And I'm just like, be quiet. And that's when all the parents were starting to jump on TikTok because COVID. And so like Gen Z or the older parents
Yeah.
generation was
Yeah.
taking over.
So, what gave you this profound insight about being successful on social media, or was it your general philosophy on being successful?
Yeah, I think that's just my basic philosophy. If
Yeah.
you work hard,
Right. Right.
strap your boots on,
Right.
get out there, work
Right.
hard, and if you put the effort in, you're going to reap the rewards of your effort, right? You can't Things aren't going to be handed to you.
Right.
You've actually got to put that effort into it.
Right. You are the only one who became successful out of the
That
three.
that's because,
That's an interesting,
well,
conversation to have, right? Because the lesson you were trying to prove to them actually turned out to be true for you, which could tell me that you were the most consistent of all of them.
there you go. There you go. And that's where it came down, is like consistently, I would post consistently. Now, granted, they were on a lot of my videos,
Right.
and so they would post it on theirs as
Right.
well, but because at that time my following had just
Interesting.
ballooned. I mean, they would
Can you
go
give an example,
weeks.
like how would your week be and how would Dalin's be, for example?
I would post daily, once a
Uh-huh.
day,
Uh-huh.
same time every
Uh-huh.
day.
Uh-huh.
On his account, he might have posted once
I see.
that week,
I see.
and sometimes he wouldn't post at all, right? But we would post on my account,
Yeah.
and we would tag him or
Mm.
whatever, right? So we'd give him credits, and he would sometimes post those videos on his account.
Right.
But um we would just have fun with it. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what it was for. We were just having fun, but
Yeah.
also I wanted to show them, hey, we could be successful if we just keep doing this,
Yeah.
right?
No, thank you for sharing that insight. I think it's super profound, and it goes back to the mission of the podcast as well. With Jack of All, I do identify with someone who gets very easily distracted with multiple, passions and things that not only I want to do, but also I know that I'm good at. I'm better than others or better than the average. But then to choose the right one and be disciplined in it and show consistency for basically that shows ownership, right? And I feel that's a very profound lesson that you taught your kids by getting a couple of million followers for yourself on TikTok.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then it got to the point where the kids, they were like, Dad, just go do your own thing. Just
Yeah.
you go dance.
When did you start thinking that, okay, this is something serious? The whole moral of the story and the lesson is over. Now I'm, obviously beating these guys by a margin. What is my
Sure,
next
sure.
step? What are you doing there?
No, it was like we were probably about a couple 100,000 followers
Mm.
on TikTok, right? And
And this happened very quickly in like matter of weeks or a month or so.
it was
A
I
couple
don't
of
know the
months.
time, few
Yeah,
months,
yeah.
yeah, a
But
few
it was
months.
like it seemed
It was
faster.
consistent.
It seemed
Like,
fast for
yeah,
you. Yeah,
the
it was
growth was
consistent.
consistent.
I
It
see.
wasn't like it would lull,
I
right?
see.
We were consistently getting
Yeah.
probably at least 1,000 followers a week at
I see.
first, right? So, and then we got a couple of them that kind of a couple videos that kind of blew up a little bit, and then you saw a big uptick in followers. But um, I guess where I wanted to kind of pull it into how I even got into Indian music, right? Or the
I'm going to
Bollywood
come to that
the
actually.
Bollywood
Yes,
stuff, right?
yes.
Because the kids were like, go do your own thing. So I would start, and I started doing all the 80s and music, back when I was a kid, dancing to all those songs that I did as a kid. And I got to the point where I was like, okay, what do I do now? Well, in college, right, we danced to folk dances from other countries. So I'm like, okay, I could probably find dances from other countries on here. And so I started looking up, folk dance, and I think some like African steps, right? I started seeing a bunch of African beats and African steps, so I started doing some of those. And somebody came on that commented and said do this dance, right? And this certain dance was teach me how to Dougie with a Hindi or a
A mash.
yeah,
A Hindi
mash,
music
where
mash.
it kind of
Okay.
came into Indian music. And so Dallin and I did this dance, right? So we're like, okay, yeah, let's try this. I talked him into teaching me how to Dougie because I had no idea how to do that, right? And I'm like, so let's just do this dance. He's like, okay. So we did this dance, and it took off. It just
Yeah.
blew up, right? So we did that, and then at that point, we started getting a ton of requests. People were like, now do this one, do this one, do this one. And so we would look them up, and we would start doing, or they would send us, they would tag us in dances on TikTok. Because when people tagged us in dances on TikTok, put at Ricky Pond, try this one, then it would tag me on it, and I could go right to that dance, right? And then we like, oh, okay, well, let's learn this one. And so we would learn that. And we did that for, it was probably a month or so, and it just started
So
growing.
now what you're doing is you were already really good at consistency. That
Yeah,
was checked. Now you added feedback
right. Yeah.
onto consistency.
So we started taking requests because I'm like, I don't know what to do anymore. Like,
So you're running this like a proper
it's
business,
like,
right?
tell me what to do, guys.
Yeah.
So people started telling me what to do, and we started dancing. And then our Indian following in the States started growing, right? And somebody in the comment, oh, maybe it was a live or something. I can't remember, but it was either a comment or a live. Somebody responded that you guys need to look at other platforms to post on
TikTok is
because
banned.
TikTok is banned in India, and we're like, huh? Like we had no idea TikTok was banned in
Wow.
India, right? And nor were we thinking about the possibility of people in India
Yeah,
seeing our
yeah.
reels, right?
So you're
Because
you're not only realizing that you will have a user base or a fan base in another country,
like it'd be
but that
global,
and
yeah.
and that fan base is already proactively helping you de-risk
Right,
your
right.
future.
And so I
This
looked
is
at
amazing
Dallin,
lesson, yeah.
and I'd heard about Reels,
Yeah.
Instagram Reels. It was something they were starting. Reels had just came out.
Were you monetizing TikTok at that point of time?
I honestly don't even know if I'm monetizing it properly now,
I
to be
see. I
honest,
see.
right? We had no idea
No
what we were
idea. What is
doing.
monetization?
We were just like
I see.
still
I
like
see.
oblivious to
I see.
what the potential or
So
what potential could be in
I
this,
see.
right?
When did TikTok start taking care of you, or did they even take care of you ever as a creator?
We've made more on Instagram than we've on TikTok.
Amazing.
Um, and again,
Yeah.
it might because we just have never figured out the whole monetization side of TikTok.
Why was YouTube not as attractive to you from the get-go?
YouTube was just another platform that I'd have to manage.
Interesting.
And it was hard enough for me to manage TikTok and Instagram, even though I was posting the same
Same thing.
dances on
Yeah.
both
Yeah. So
platforms,
what do we
basically.
mean by manage other than just uploading it?
That pretty much, right? I mean, I work a full-time job. I
Yeah.
work 40 hours a week. I come home. I have dad things to do.
Absolutely.
I spend an hour of my day learning a dance, recording it,
Yeah.
and then I post it at 8 o'clock at night.
I see.
Between when I learn a dance and record it,
Yeah.
I might do it like at 5 o'clock when I get home from work, and
Wow.
then I get it done by 6, and then it's on my phone, and then from 6 to 8, I'm doing whether it's part of the honeydew list, or, it's helping the kids do whatever they need to get done, or, or if I'm just kicking my feet up and watching a movie with my wife or something, right?
Yeah.
There, it's the family stuff, right? And then I also looked at YouTube as it's a longer format platform, and a 15 to 30-second dance was long enough or hard enough for me to produce.
Okay. I want to talk about both the positives and the negatives of this life-changing event that happened in your.
Hmm.
We can start with the positives. You found new love in another country,
Oh yeah.
and I personally go and read the comments from some of those Indian folks. Was there a bit of a cultural shock because Indian audiences, the word fandom is defined by how you see a lot of your fans react to your reels and comments. I remember I posted something about a Keli the other day, and your audience was completely surprised as to what's happening. Ricky's getting involved with Hindi movies or Indian movies, and they were wanting you to have an Aadhaar card, which is equivalent to an SSN, a social security number, which is the highest respect an
Sure.
American creator can get in India. So how did that feel? Was this a cultural shock? Can you walk us through each and every step of this fandom?
Yeah, I think some of the coolest experiences we had when we first got on to Reels, and we, in a matter of, I don't know, it was probably a matter of 7 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, maybe even quicker. I don't know. But we had 250 to 300,000 followers. This was 100%. We
Organic, like,
started
yeah.
posting on because people told us to post on a different
I
platform,
see.
and so we started posting on Reels, and it was like almost overnight.
I
Like
see.
it just went boom and it took off, and it was 90% were people from India that were following.
I see.
Because we started posting our Indian content on there because that's where they could share it with their family and friends, right? That was where we were able to connect with that audience
Mm,
that we didn't have
mm,
before,
mm,
apparently, or have the
mm,
opportunity
mm,
to um, dance
mm,
for, I guess.
mm.
And then we would go live, and we started to bring people on our lives. Because TikTok
Why did you go
lives,
live?
because I liked to connect. I like to talk to people.
So there was no
Um,
intention to gain more followers. This was just you doing
no,
something
this
fun.
this was just us
I see.
going on to talk
Makes
and
sense. I've been on
introduce,
live as well.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
introduce ourselves to
yeah.
people.
Absolutely.
And then there was the option to allow people to come onto your live.
Yes,
And we're
that was
like,
very creative
and we're like,
from Meta.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
And so we're like, hey, do you want to join our live? And this person pops up, and it's an Indian person, and they
Uh-huh.
freaked out that here they were talking to us, and here we are going, um, it's just,
Yeah.
I'm just Ricky. Don't, I mean, or I'm just like the guy that lives next
Yeah.
door to you.
So
I'm
you had no
that,
experience, so you were not used to it, the fandom,
no,
right? And
not
you
at
had no
all.
idea that person was a fan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not at all. But this person was literally in
Of
tears.
course.
And Dallin was like, he was like, holy cow. Like, I mean, this was like this
Yeah, yeah,
shock
yeah,
to all of us,
yeah.
right? Because we don't see ourselves like that.
Right.
And we still don't see
I know
ourselves
that.
like that.
Yes.
We just see ourselves as the pawns, our friends, everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, now just
Yeah.
to like today in today's world, like 2020 to now, I think most of the people that know us have a inclination that we're on social media, but they don't like bring it up, or
I see.
it's not like a thing, right?
Mm.
Or they, hey, I saw that video you did the other day, it was kind of cool, right? And I'm like, okay, but it's not like a big deal, right? So like when I'm here, I'm just me.
Do you know why
Doesn't
why you are so famous, or possible reasons why you could have hit the popularity note with the Indian followers?
there's so many there's so many parallels to the way they live their life and how they revere their family, kind of the same way we do. And so there was a lot of commonality
Yeah,
and belief systems, I
yeah,
think. And so it was very telling, and just talking with people, and how accepting they were of us, and how, you know, there's always the negatives, right? But we just a lot of times we look past those. Sometimes the kids can't help themselves.
yeah.
But
We'll get to
yeah,
the negatives
yeah,
actually as a separate section.
yeah.
But please finish your thought.
But we just kind of we loved how people just accepted us for kind of who we were,
Yeah,
and they didn't take offense
yeah,
to us trying out. They would send us clothes. We would wear, because they would ask us to wear clothes, and I always felt weird wearing like clothes, because in today's world
yeah,
where
yeah.
you can get blamed for
I agree.
cultural appropriation or
Yeah,
whatever, right?
yeah,
It wasn't my intention at all.
yeah,
And so I never wanted to go down the road
yeah,
of offending
yeah,
anybody
yeah,
for doing
yeah,
something,
yeah.
right?
How do you see this following or this online presence that you have? Is this something that you can just give up in a day and switch off your account and be happy the same way you were? Yeah,
uh, I think if I had to, yeah, I could shut the thing off and just go,
yeah,
but I also have made so many connections to so
yeah,
many people that I would wonder, hey, what's going on with so and so, or what's happening with so and so, just because, we've made some really good friends through social media, and um, through just connecting with people, that it would be hard. I mean, maybe we would probably figure out a way to connect outside
yeah,
of that, I'm
yeah.
sure. But we're I don't know. Hopefully we would never have to figure that out. But
I hope so too.
if we had to, yeah, I think
I
we
hope
could
so
just
too.
go with our business.
So, how do you be a perfectionist, have multiple talents at the same time, have the world at your feet, not care about losing it tomorrow when you while you still have a good family, and then you also want to do better? How do you see this? And as an artist, were you actually a responsible artist, or you were like artist by chance?
I don't know if I was an artist by chance. I think I was an artist by choice. When we started talking about just multiple talents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's got them. Everybody has talents, and everybody's good at something, right? And you're passionate about something, and it's really about taking those passions and just developing to a point where you can figure out how to make money at doing that passion,
Yeah,
right? It's not, or make a living at doing that passion, because sometimes it's not all about the money. It's all about, like, am I happy?
yeah,
Um, and can I live, right? You don't have to be rich, but can I live? And that's kind of how, I look at it. My family is the most important thing to me, and it's not about whether we live in a multi-million dollar home, which we don't. It's like, can we live?
yeah,
And can they put
yeah,
food on the table,
yeah.
and or do they have shoes on their feet, and that type of thing, right?
That's it.
That's the important thing. Do I have to make? Would I love to make a lot of money? Yeah, I would love.
Yeah,
I would love to
yeah.
just do whatever I want.
So the creator in you is not separate from the need to survive.
The creator in me it's just me. Like, I think it's just part of me, right? There's a part of you that whatever you do, you make it you, and it's kind of,
Yeah,
I don't know how to explain it. It's just like, I create the way I do my TikToks or
Yeah.
my Instagram reels,
Yeah.
I create them and I put as much work into them as I
Yeah.
put into anything else that I do, my graphic design
Yeah.
career, my
Yeah.
business,
Yeah.
those type of things.
Yeah.
I will do the same dance 30, 40 times before and record it like 30, 40 times and then go back and watch those
Mm.
30, 40 and
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
that's the one I'll post,
Wow.
right?
So you have a patience as well.
So it's not like I'm not going to, I've never recorded a dance on the first take and then posted it. Never. It never happened, right? It's usually
Has that ever happened with anything that you do?
the first, the first thing. No.
I mean, unless it's like a huge deal, like you have to spend 8 hours to do the first time, but
No, because I've learned I think design has also helped me with that because if I'm designing a logo, it's never the first one that comes out on paper that's the right
yes.
logo. It's
Yes.
usually the 50th or the 100th or more, right? It's kind of that first one is always a jumping point to the next
Absolutely.
10
Yeah.
and
It's
then
the
that
baseline.
right. And so I never take the first one as that's my best one. And honestly, the first one is always the most stiff, the most awkward looking because I'm still figuring out the rhythm of everything. And so it takes me 3 or 4 times, like it takes me a good 10, a half dozen times or so just to finally start to get the feel
The
of
feel
it.
of it. Yeah.
Dallin and I will go live doing a dance and because we'll do it from start to finish on a
Right.
live,
On a live.
right?
Wow.
And we've been on live for like 2 hours before, just doing the dance over and 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 over.
Wow.
And then we don't end the live until we get the dance.
And how does your
And
audience like that?
it's a lot of fun
Huh?
because Dallin likes it because it keeps me not losing my cool because I'm like I'll get frustrated
Yeah.
and because I'm a perfectionist and I want
Yeah.
to do it perfect
Yeah.
and so I think Dallin likes putting me on live doing it because he
Wow.
knows that you know I'll keep my cool better because I know people are watching and it's like even though I still will kind of like
Yeah.
I'll slap my
Yeah.
hands together
So,
clap and stuff.
so closing that point, right? I wanted to ask you a very different question. 100 years from now, when Ricky Pond is long gone, and with a lot of dances still entertaining the world, what are the three things that you would want everybody to know about you? If at all you want anybody to know anything about you other than your family.
you know um just that I'm genuine,
Hmm.
right? That I'm not fake, and basically I am what you see,
Yeah.
right? it's
Yeah.
it's not that I'm putting on a show for
Yeah.
anybody. Like what you see is who I am,
Yeah.
right?
So with Ricky, you
And
get what you see.
right, I
Yeah.
always look at it as if fame ever did happen,
Hmm.
right? I would want to be the same person I am today. That like if some stranger like 6 months ago or a year ago walked up to me in Costco and said, "Hey, are you Ricky Pond?" Oh, he's this Indian family, right? They walked up to, "Are you Ricky Pond?" And I'm like, "Yeah." How are you? We just had this conversation. We just talked, and they were like,
Wow.
you couldn't believe it, right? And I was
Yeah.
just like, "Hey, what's up?"
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like I'm a normal
Yeah.
person, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I want to. I
Yeah.
would
What
love.
is the sweetest thing or the kindest thing that any of your Indian fans have done? One example in real life and one in online, if you can share.
Well, real life, one of my fans, I had well, it didn't happen, right? So this is the baseline, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it didn't happen,
Okay.
but I was invited to that Ivanti wedding. Um,
Which wedding?
that big Ambani.
Ambani wedding?
Yeah, so I was in
You
the
were
Ambani.
invited to the
Yeah, so
Ambani
so I was
wedding.
invited to the Ambani wedding, right?
Why did we not start with this?
And and so they were going to bring me over for the 4 or 5 day wedding ceremony stuff. And it was some company, or it was anyway, they were associated with the group, and they contacted me, or my agent. They contacted my agent July 1st, and I was supposed to be there by the 15th or the
Yeah,
12th or something like
yeah.
that, right? But my agent, I don't think she was used to working
With
back and
the
forth
Indian
with
folks.
Indian.
Uh,
Well, because the time difference,
I see,
right?
I see.
And so she would email them,
Yeah.
and then she would get a response the next day,
I
and she
see.
would reply to
I
them,
see.
and then so it was always like a day
Yeah.
to day to day. Next thing I know, I'm getting looped in on the 5th
Wow.
or 6th
Wow.
of July, right? And so I'm like, yes, like
Yeah.
let's figure this thing out because they
Yeah.
were gonna fly me over, they were
Wow.
gonna, all that stuff. I'm like, yes, let's just say yes
Yeah.
and figure out what we're gonna do
Yeah.
here. Well, one of the coolest things is we've made connections with a an Indian designer, clothing designer. So
Mm-hmm.
she's been in Paris Fashion Week or Paris Fashion Week.
What's her name?
Um, it's C I don't remember her name right now.
Indian fashion
Yes.
designer?
Yes. CDC or CBC? I can't remember.
CBC. Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, um, so I DM'd her and I'm like, hey, I don't know if this is going to happen because it's the 6th. I have to be there on the 12th. But if we can work out the details, I've been invited to this wedding. I says, but I don't even know what to wear. And she's like, send me your measurements. I'll see if there's
So
something
she
in
was
my
assigned to
person.
you by the Ambani group?
No,
No.
no, she was just somebody that I'd made connections with
Oh.
through
So why
the
were you
internet.
doing that? Did the management not say that they will provide you any
I
kind of
I didn't
costumes?
know.
Oh, so you had no
I
communication.
had no communications because
Ah,
it was all through my
agent.
agent.
I see.
And I just was like, I don't even know what to wear. So if I go to this thing, if they don't provide me with something, what am I supposed to
Hmm.
wear? And so I just DM'd her and I'm like,
Did you tell her that you are going to the Ambani wedding?
yeah. And I said, well, I was invited, but I'm not sure if it's going to happen. But I was just going to be prepared.
Wow.
So I called her, and she's like, okay, yeah. So she sent me overnight. She sent me three outfits from her personal collection, and so that I would
She
have
sent you
something. Yeah.
from India.
No, she's from Ohio, but she's Indian, and she basically started her fashion company during COVID.
I
So, I mean,
see.
it's just been crazy for her lately
Wow.
too. So, um, anyway, that was the coolest thing personally somebody's ever done for me. Like that she was willing to just say boom and she sent me these outfits
And you had your
because
outfits by in
and
3 days.
and I had my outfits like the next day, right? Because I had it way in time
Wow.
for like if I ever got, but that we never figured out or we never got the details
Something
worked
happened.
out,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so
It fell
it
through.
fell
Yeah.
through. So we
Yeah.
never went.
And any online gesture that you love from your Indian fans?
Um, I just love when they comment. I love reading their comments. Um, I love when there is somebody that leaves a bad comment or something like that, and honestly, they take care of that for me, and they'll let them know about how
Stay
not
away.
to let
मेरे रिक्की से
so
दूर
exactly. So
रहो.
that's that. Those have been nice
मेरा
gestures,
रिक्की, yeah, yeah. Other than songs and dances, have you ever watched Hindi movie or a Bollywood movie or an Indian movie of any kind? Different aspects you've tried to explore the Indian culture other than just dance and songs?
Yeah, we've watched a few like on Netflix,
You
right?
have.
My wife has watched more Bollywood shows than I have or movies than I have because it has the
I
subtitles
see.
and I cannot keep up with the
Really?
subtitles and read the
Yeah.
subtitles and then pay attention to what's
Yeah.
going on in the movie.
Yeah.
So it's either I have no idea what they're talking about and I
Or
just try to guess what's going on
or you're reading a
or I
novel.
focus on what's reading and what
You're
they're
reading a novel with
saying
audiobook
and
on.
I'm not watching what's going on. So it's kind of the so I've not really watched a whole lot.
Okay. But any movies that you've watched?
We watched what was it called? There was one called The Three
The Three
Idiots.
Idiots, yeah, it's a cult
Yeah.
classic, and I mean, when I say classic, it's just like
Yeah. Yeah, it's one
very
of those.
recent.
Yeah.
But it's one of those movies that is loved by all different ages in
Yeah.
India,
Yeah,
and
and we had a lot of people telling us that you need to watch that one, you need to watch that one. So we watched that one.
yeah, yeah.
Again, I was just like struggling trying to keep up, but no, it was, I would love to watch them. They're cinematically like they're great.
Yeah.
Like,
So maybe coming to the last, segment of our chat today, and I want to know about or discuss some really important things as a creator yourself, someone who's found fame, love, attention, feedback, uh, great moments to share and remember and cherish. What are some drawbacks of this success, both on the apps itself and to in your personal or real life, as we may call it, in Eastern Washington?
um, I don't know. Like, I don't know if there's necessarily drawbacks in the apps other than, maybe there's features that you kind of wish you had, or some of the app, like there's features on TikTok that you wish Instagram had, or there's Instagram features that you wish TikTok had, or whatever, right? Because you're just kind of
Yeah.
like, I wish they would be a little more,
Navigating the
yeah.
challenges, yeah.
So I think the constant changing of how the algorithm works. I know it's important, but it's like you start to understand how things are working, and then it changes, and then you're figuring the whole thing out again, and it's just kind of those are just challenges, right?
Right.
And I don't I try not to worry a whole lot about that stuff. I know Dallin kind of digs into that a little bit more than I do, and but
So he's the analytics guy, the
yeah,
quant guy.
he's kind of the guy who tried to figure out all that stuff for us. But you know, I think the biggest challenge for me um, is that I almost sometimes feel like the need, or that I need to post every day, right? Because I've it's been a habit now for like 4 years,
Mm.
right? Since
Every day
since
since last
2020.
4 years,
So we've been
not a
doing it
single
dance.
break,
Oh, we there's been breaks,
cheat
but
days.
every day that I miss, I feel guilty.
Oh,
Like I'll go back in my drafts and I'll put a draft up, but I'll feel like that's sort of
cheating.
cheating the
I see.
system,
I
right? I'm
see.
kind of like
Yeah.
that was cheap, you know.
You're a good man, Ricky. You're a good man. You have conscience when no one is looking. So tell me, hate, discrimination, ageism. I can imagine a lot of
You
current issues
know,
you may be subject to.
they don't bother me until they go after my kids,
Yeah.
or they go after they say something that is really just not true about us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Those are the comments that kind of hurt.
Right.
But most of the time I ignore them.
Right.
That's not worth giving. It's really not worth giving them
Right.
the platform
Right.
by even commenting back to them,
Right.
right?
Right.
A lot of times our fans take care of them, or it's better just to ignore it,
Yeah.
because it gets lost in the 1,000 or 500 comments or whatever it might be
Yeah.
on that video,
Yeah.
and nobody sees it, or and I don't. A lot of creators will delete them, like get rid of or hide or delete negative comments. I leave them up there. I mean, I'm like, if you're going to put something mean up there,
Mm.
then and you're going to hide behind a profile, people are going to see what you're putting up there. I'm not going to,
Yeah.
I don't try to ban them. I don't, you know, tattle on them, to the creators of Instagram or
Yeah.
whatever. I'm
Yeah.
just like, you know what?
Yeah.
If you're going to be rude, people will see you for
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
You think you're famous enough to be bothered at local restaurants around your place where you live or your kids?
no.
How do your real neighbors who know you since last 20 years or something feel about this whole thing?
I don't know.
You don't know.
I really don't know. I
Interesting.
mean, we've gone to a restaurant here in Seattle and we've had somebody walk, my wife and I were eating and they came up and they're like, "Are you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And do you want a picture or whatever? Hey, what's going on? You know, so we just talked to them. It wasn't like a big deal. So, I mean, I like meeting people. It's not, it hasn't ever been a problem, but again,
Yeah.
I don't see myself as famous or I
Yeah.
don't see myself
You don't
as
see
that,
yourself as
right?
that, yeah.
So it's just normal. Like
Yeah.
not it's not normal, but it's just kind of normal like, oh, I just met somebody
I
today,
see. I
right?
see.
It hasn't been a problem, I
Yeah.
guess, right?
Awesome. Yeah. Moving on to the topic of what is next for Ricky. Does Ricky actually think about what is next for Ricky, or this whole film thing or acting thing happened by chance? Because when we were chatting for the last 2 hours, you never mentioned anything about acting prior to doing this project. So, yeah, can you share more about how did this acting thing start and how did you feel about take us through the journey of those incidents and how you felt about it.
Yeah. Well, before the opportunity, right, that you approached me with, my only acting skill or my only acting was at a coworker came up to me and said, "Hey, somebody dropped out of this play that we're doing for the elderly at some whatever. Do you want to do it?" I'm like, oh, I felt bad. I'm like, okay, sure, I'll do it, right? So that I was in this little play with them, right? That was my only acting. And so really I was as green as they could be.
Did you feel scared about acting itself, or did you feel like it may take some time for you to get to a perfectionist level that you like? And for that amount of time, you will have to be vulnerable and you're not liking that feeling.
Yes and yes. Um, Dallin coached me a ton
Okay.
because that's what he wants to do
Yeah.
is act. Um, but my I was afraid that because I know myself and know how I have to do it perfect, that I would mess up my line and then I would need to say it again and then I need to say it again and I'm thinking, but then my mind goes to I'm wasting their film and they don't have all day for me to do my lines. So yeah, I was nervous. I was
Yeah.
way nervous.
So how did it happen? Like you got a DM from me. What did you feel?
I got a DM from you and I was like, are you serious? I wasn't
Yeah, it was
sure
kind of
whether to
shady
take it.
for me to just reach out to you saying that, hey, I live in Seattle and I don't believe I have the budget to reach your manager out.
It was one of like probably a few hundred DMs that came in that day, and I was just scrolling through because I like to try to read those DMs, right? And I started scrolling through, and I clicked on it, and I started reading it, and it was just it was before I was in the process of talking to getting a manager, but I didn't have a manager, and it was like, hey, do you want to be in the short film we're doing? And I'm like, that might be kind of fun.
I
And
see.
Dallin, he would always say, you're probably gonna end up getting into a show before me, and then so that was kind of another thing, it's kind of like, oh look, I'm gonna get in a movie, Dallin. And then
Yeah.
that was like, that's when after we'd talked, I was like, hey, Dallin, and you're like, yeah, there's a part for him, and
Yeah.
so that was kind of it was cool. But no, at first it was just kind of like, huh, no, this would be fun. It's Seattle. I could
Yeah.
take a couple days and go to
Yeah.
Seattle and do
Yeah.
this. This would be fun.
Yeah.
So I was nervous, yeah, because I'd never done anything before it. But it was also super cool to see behind the scenes and be there and see everything that goes on
Yeah.
to just film a scene. The light
So
came
how was
on,
your
boom.
first read with us? How did you feel?
Um, like a fish out of water. Like I probably have no business. I have no business being in this business, right? I'm
Okay.
like, they're asking me to act a certain way, and I don't know how I'm going to do this, right? Get into the head of a character. How do you do that?
Yeah,
Like
yeah. So share more about your journey after that first read, and how what was your experience working with Michael, and what was your experience working with Mansa,
Mhm.
who is the lead of Akeli playing Anika.
Sure, no, it was no, I had a the experience in as a whole was just awesome, right? I mean, I came in super nervous still. I mean, uh, this is just not my element at all.
Wow.
And I walk in and I'm kind of like going, wow, okay, this is real. It was, I think from the beginning all the way through, was just a great experience, you
Yeah.
know.
And how was it working with, you know, the lead character of the movie? Mansa was part of Akeli as playing Anika.
Yeah,
And I know she comes from a lot of experience holding like a diploma in acting, having led feature films now, which will be coming soon, Telugu sci-fi feature film that will be releasing in September in the theaters. Um, how was that experience? How did you guys make each other comfortable because you were sharing this screen space for a long time?
sure, sure. You know, I believe we got on a Zoom pre even getting together in Seattle, and talked and just had a conversation to get to know each other a little bit better,
Right.
right? Just so
Ready?
that
Yes,
when
I'm
we,
Anika.
I guess, to build,
Hey,
I guess,
I'm
some
losing
sort of a
battery. This phone
chemistry that
doesn't
we
last
Yeah.
long and I
had,
gotta go,
Yeah.
okay?
that we
Bye.
knew each
See you
other
soon.
before we
Yeah.
got to set,
Yeah.
right? Um, you know, what's kind of funny, right? Um, it was weird for me, right? So been married for, since I was 22, right? And here I am now. I'm like, okay, so I'm acting with another wife to another
I
actor, right?
see.
So
I
it was
see.
it was like all
Oh,
this stuff was going
wow.
in my head before we met, before we did
I
all that stuff, like
see.
going, okay, I'm nervous now. What if I have to,
Wow.
even though I knew what the plot was, what's
Right.
going down and
Right.
stuff, it was just I wasn't sure exactly how we were going to interact and
Yeah.
how
How is it going to
like
work out in the physical space? And,
right.
the actress is maybe from a different country, a different generation. And I really don't know. Because
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be fair to you, majority of the cast was from the Indian diaspora. The entire crew was American, and most of your scenes were just with the lead actress, and you were playing a very specific role.
As the production evolved,
Yeah,
I felt more comfortable.
you
I
did.
felt more relaxed. I didn't feel as pressured when we first started. And I don't care if it was we went from this scene to this scene, or, it was like when we started that first scene, I was nervous. But
Mm-hmm.
as we progressed in that scene, the nerves kind of went away.
Yeah,
And then it just kind of became um, me and the camera,
yeah,
right? I had to remind myself, just like I do, or I don't have to remind myself when I'm at home dancing, but it's just me and the camera.
yeah,
And when I post it live or I post it on my social media accounts, yeah, lots of people are going to see it, but that's not what I'm thinking about
yeah,
while I'm dancing.
yeah,
It's me and the camera and the steps, right?
yeah.
So I kind of had to go back into that mind space in my head. It's just me and the camera.
Yeah. So tell me more about the hat and this
It covers my
beautiful vest.
It covers my bald head and this
So this
keep
is this is from your look in Akeli, which is you're playing Bruce,
right,
right?
right. Yeah.
Wow. So coming to the last and the end segment of our uh, podcast. First of all, what an inspiring journey you had, Ricky. I think not just me or a couple of people in the room, but also many from our audience members will relate to a lot of things that you shared. The whole point of our podcast is to share inspiring stories of people who have dared to be themselves and more without worrying about what is the success metric and things that we've already discussed with you. What are important things to you, and how you balance them to continue to have fun with the amazing skills that you've been blessed with. Um, with that, I want to say that you are not just an inspirational influencer, but a very, very impressive human being that I have had the opportunity to personally work with. And I've learned so much from you, Ricky. A few things that I would like to call out or summarize for my audience members is that some things that I've learned over years being in social media and different tech companies are things that you identified yourself without any help. For example, consistency is the key to be successful, not just in social media, but everything that you do, filmmaking, stand-up comedy, whether you are a doctor, any profession, consistency is the key. Practices everything. Secondly, one important thing that you showed is that you are always eager to take feedback, because the feedback kind of forces you in a new direction, and that new direction is something that you crave always, right? So that also does a lot of good things that you mentioned, that while taking feedback, you're a person who is loved by their fans and who's loved by people around. So even when there is a bit of a negative energy around you in your comment sections, there are too many positive things that you've done and people that you've gained that stand up for you. And if that is not God taking care of you, who what else is? I really don't understand. So this is what I think, and what I got from you, and I think I'm going to continue to be inspired by you. Thank you so much for being on Jack of All, and I hope that this one opportunity that we had to work together on a film set also inspires you to do more films, feature films in the future, and we get to work together as well. So thank you so much, and thanks for having Dalin as well. It was fun to chat with him and get to know his views on what is the future of social media, what is the future of the youth that is today, and what he has learned from his dad Ricky Pond.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Take care.
Cue the music.
Yeah.